Before we begin, make sure you stay until the very end of this story, because what happened on that stage left an entire audience in tears, stunned Simon Cowell into complete silence, and changed one young boy's life forever. And if stories of courage, hidden talent, and impossible dreams inspire you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable journey. Trust me, the ending of this story is something you will remember long after this video is over. The bright stage lights of America's biggest talent show illuminated the auditorium, but no one in the audience paid much attention when the next contestant's name appeared on the giant screen. People whispered among themselves, some checking their phones, others sipping drinks as they waited for what they assumed would be another ordinary audition. After all, the contestant walking onto the stage didn't look like someone who would create television history. His name was Miguel Santos, a 16-year-old teenager from a small fishing village in the Philippines. He was thin, nervous, and dressed in a simple white shirt that looked slightly too large for him. His worn-out shoes revealed years of use, and his hands trembled as he stepped into the spotlight. The enormous theater suddenly felt much bigger than he had imagined. Simon Cowell glanced at the audition card in front of him. Sofia Vergara smiled politely. Heidi Klum leaned forward with curiosity. Howie Mandel gave the teenager an encouraging nod. Miguel swallowed hard and looked out into the sea of faces. "So, Miguel," Simon said. "Tell us a little about yourself." The teenager took a deep breath. "My family is from a small village near the ocean," he replied softly. "My father is a fisherman, and my mother sells food in the market." The audience listened quietly. Simon nodded. "And why did you decide to come here?" Miguel's eyes filled with emotion. "Because my father always believed I could do something special with my voice." The room became noticeably quieter. "Always believed?" Simon asked. Miguel paused. "My father passed away last year." A sudden silence spread across the theater. The young boy looked down for a moment, struggling to continue. "He never got the chance to see me perform on a big stage. Before he died, he told me not to give up singing no matter how difficult life became." Even Simon's expression softened. Miguel continued. "After he was gone, things became very hard. Sometimes we didn't have enough money. I worked after school helping fishermen carry equipment just so I could help my mother." Many audience members were already emotional. "But every night," Miguel said, "I would sing beside the ocean because that's where my father used to listen to me." For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then Simon gently asked, "And what are you going to sing today?" Miguel smiled through his sadness. "An Elvis Presley song." The audience exchanged surprised looks. A 16-year-old Filipino teenager choosing Elvis Presley was unexpected enough. Most people assumed he would attempt a modern pop song. Simon raised an eyebrow. "Elvis? That's a big risk." Miguel nodded. "I know." Simon leaned back. "Okay, Miguel. Good luck." The music began. At first, the auditorium remained calm. Then Miguel opened his mouth. The effect was immediate. The first note exploded through the speakers like something nobody had prepared for. The audience literally gasped. Heads snapped upward. Several people sat forward in their seats. The voice coming from the shy teenager didn't sound remotely like what anyone expected. It wasn't merely good. It was extraordinary. Rich. Powerful. Soulful. Every note carried emotion so deep that it seemed impossible for someone his age. Even more shocking was how naturally he captured the spirit of Elvis Presley without becoming an imitation. He wasn't pretending to be Elvis. He was honoring him. Miguel transformed the classic song into something uniquely his own. Simon Cowell's eyes widened. That rarely happened. Over the years Simon had heard thousands upon thousands of singers. Very few managed to surprise him. Miguel was doing exactly that. As the performance continued, the atmosphere inside the theater changed completely. People stopped breathing normally. They stopped whispering. They stopped moving. The entire audience became locked into the performance. Every lyric seemed connected to Miguel's personal story. The loss of his father. The struggles at home. The dreams he carried across an ocean. The hope he refused to abandon. When he reached the chorus, something magical happened. The emotion became overwhelming. A woman in the front row wiped away tears. Then another. Then another. The song was no longer entertainment. It had become a message. A reminder that pain and hope often exist together. Miguel closed his eyes and sang with everything he had. Every sacrifice. Every disappointment. Every memory of his father. Every dream of giving his mother a better life. It all poured into the music. Backstage, crew members stood frozen. Producers exchanged astonished looks. Some had already witnessed hundreds of auditions that season. None felt quite like this. Halfway through the song, Simon slowly removed his glasses. He stared directly at Miguel. Not analyzing. Not judging. Simply listening. For perhaps the first time all day, Simon Cowell seemed genuinely speechless. The final verse arrived. Miguel's voice climbed higher and higher. The tension inside the theater became almost unbearable. Then came the final note. Long. Powerful. Perfect. The sound echoed through the auditorium. And for one brief second after it ended, there was complete silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The audience appeared frozen. Then suddenly the theater erupted. People jumped to their feet. Thunderous applause filled every corner of the room. The standing ovation arrived instantly. Not gradually. Instantly. Audience members screamed. Cheered. Clapped until their hands hurt. Miguel stood on stage trying to process what was happening. Tears formed in his eyes. He looked toward the ceiling. As though searching for someone. As though hoping his father could somehow see this moment. The judges rose from their chairs. Every single one of them. Heidi Klum was visibly emotional. Sofia Vergara wiped tears from her face. Howie shook his head in disbelief. Simon remained standing longer than anyone else. The applause continued. And continued. And continued. Finally, Simon spoke. Miguel. The audience quieted. Simon paused. For a moment it looked as though he was carefully choosing his words. I've been doing this for a very long time. The audience listened intently. And every now and then, somebody walks onto this stage and reminds us why we created shows like this in the first place. Miguel lowered his head. Simon continued. Most people watching today saw a nervous teenager. What they didn't see was a young man carrying grief, responsibility, and dreams far bigger than himself. The audience applauded again. Simon pointed toward Miguel. But what impressed me most wasn't your voice. Miguel looked surprised. It was your heart. A fresh wave of applause swept through the theater. Simon nodded. When you sang, every person in this room believed every word. Miguel could barely hold back tears. The audience was emotional once again. Then Simon smiled. And by the way, that voice is absolutely incredible. The theater exploded with cheers. Miguel laughed through his tears. Howie leaned toward his microphone. Young man, if Elvis Presley were alive today, I think he'd be standing and applauding with the rest of us. The audience roared. Sophia added, you didn't just sing a song. You told your story. Heidi nodded. And millions of people are going to remember you. Miguel covered his face as emotions overwhelmed him. Then came the voting. Howie said yes. Heidi said yes. Sophia said yes. The crowd erupted before Simon even spoke. Simon smiled. Miguel, it's the easiest yes I've given in a very long time. 4 yes. The audience went wild. Miguel dropped to his knees. Tears streamed down his face. Years of hardship. Years of sacrifice. Years of believing when nobody else could see the future. All of it had led to this moment. Backstage, his mother cried uncontrollably as she watched from a monitor. She remembered every struggle. Every unpaid bill. Every difficult night. Every moment her son chose hope over despair. And now the world was finally seeing what she had always known. The audition quickly spread across social media. Millions watched. Millions shared. People from different countries connected with Miguel's story. Not because he was famous. Not because he was perfect. But because he represented something universal. The power of refusing to quit. The courage to keep dreaming even when life becomes painful. The belief that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. Weeks later, when reporters asked Miguel what he was thinking during the performance, his answer touched hearts everywhere. He said, "I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was singing for my father." Those words became unforgettable. Because sometimes the most powerful performances are not about fame. They're about love. They're about honoring the people who believed in us before anyone else did. Miguel's journey reminded millions that success doesn't always begin with confidence. Sometimes it begins with fear. Sometimes it begins with loss. Sometimes it begins with standing alone and choosing to keep going anyway. The boy who once sang beside the ocean for a single listener had suddenly reached the entire world. And perhaps the most beautiful part of his story wasn't Simon Cowell's reaction. It wasn't the standing ovation. It wasn't the millions of views. It was the fact that a promise made between a father and son survived even after death. A promise carried through age.